There's a divide when I'm here between you guys.
That's right.
Different factions of us. Wastewater gay.
Wastewater anymore. Back to the quarter in the jar.
The
Only
work,
quarter.
the work gang.
W2, R2.
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the committee of the whole to order. Board members and guests, guys, for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Trustee Monica.
Here.
Trustee Cascarilla. Present. Trustee Brewer. Trustee Bowen.
Here.
Treasurer Fedewa.
Here.
Clerk Clark is present. Supervisor Fletcher.
Here. Thank you. Motion to excuse trustee Brewer would be on.
So moved.
Support. Then moved and supported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have the agenda before us. Any additions or deletions? Not a motion to approve. Andrea,
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
is there support?
Support.
There is support. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public comment, seeing no public. Managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. Just a reminder, Restaurant Week started tonight. Colin also has another event coming up on April 7th. It's Finance 101. He has several of our local banks will be there to talk about financing for small business and for residents as well. So there's a business component and just a personal finance component to that.
Beware, where is it held at?
It'll be held at the community center, 6 p.m. We did have a fire this morning. I didn't get a chance to update everyone about 10 a.m. On Pinkerton. Nobody was hurt, not just a lot of smoke damage, not a lot of other damage. A few weeks ago, we did the memorandum of understanding with the firefighters too. So we posted those positions. We have roughly about 40 applications. So we'll be kind of working with the chiefs to work through that process to hopefully restack our deck and have be back at full staffing, and we'll have quite a few people who are helping through paramedic schooling, but it will be good to get bodies back in the fire station. So that's all I have, Mr. Supervisor. Answer any questions?
Thanks, Brian. You got questions for Dennis?
Just a couple, so that's sort of the candidate pool, is sort of a turnaround for us, isn't it? Yeah, that's encouraging, from what I've been a friend earlier, so that's encouraging. The other question was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Treasurer. Yeah, I think changing some of the components of the application and then having a lot of positive energy behind it from our department will certainly help.
Okay, good. Well, the only other comment is, since Restaurant Week, I was just curious where Manager Reed was gonna treat the board to dinner. Meeting tonight.
I think the McDonald's night.
I saw it on the news this morning, so it was nice to see the publicity around it.
Yeah, quite a bit. I do think tonight is a Middle Eastern night. I think they tunes apply. So a couple good places.
And you want to say I was there when Brian Tork from the Smoking Pig was interviewed, And he just said glowing things about Delta Township during his interview. I don't know. I didn't see the story on the air, so I don't know how much of it got cut out of the story. But he went on and on about how great Delta Township is, such a great place to do business and how much the help and support he's received and stuff from the township. So that was great to hear.
That's awesome.
And just a comment on that, with the food truck situation, I was reading an article. Marion Township, the old Hazel Plaza there, there's some developers that are talking about, wanting to develop in housing, mixed use and all that sort of stuff. But part of that component was food trucks. And there was some people that didn't want that. I was surprised on the board. So anyway, that was all I had.
Other questions for Brian? Okay, thanks, Brian. We move to the items on the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting. First up is the discussion on free sanitary products offered in the township owned public restrooms.
Great. So the last time this was discussed, there were a few questions that needed to be answered before the board could continue on with further discussion. And those questions, of course, was, is it allowed an expenditure? What's the anticipated cost of the township, and also what the logistics of implementation are? So yes, it is an allowable expenditure as long as it's not offered to only employees, but also to the public, which is what we're going for. And then also, as long as we're not donating it to other outside organizations. The anticipated cost, we looked at how many women's restrooms the township owns in buildings and parks such as our enrichment center and community center. That cost is looking at a little over $3,500. And then in addition to that, we are looking at more trafficked areas for our unisex restrooms, which would be estimated a little over $2,700. These don't include facilities located at our utilities buildings or our fire stations because they really don't see public traffic. Surprisingly, I did find out that our fire station 1 already does this. Unfortunately, they did tell me that it doesn't really get used much. So they've just been kind of sitting in the restroom for, I don't know how long, but and then they're
Does
actually.
the public really go in there? In the fire station?
They do, and they have a lot of training going on too over there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's just every week for training.
right, yeah. The library says that they've received a positive response from the public using the items that are offered. So with that, I'll mention, just for you to keep in mind in your discussions on this topic, is that these items, they do have a shelf life, which is 3 to 5 years. And that that's only if they're stored in a cool and dry environment. So nowhere where there's moisture, or else then they will grow mold, of course. And then just to be aware that these products aren't packaged and sealed as sterile products. So of course, again, they need to be stored properly. And this is all according to Procter & Gamble, who owns Tampax. So, and then of course, the logistics of the implementation, since we don't really see high traffic numbers at any of our utility building or the fire stations, we would not install dispensers, but have some type of container that they can be stored in and still be offered to the public if there's ever a need. And then since the purchases are over $5,000, we wouldn't need to come back to the board. Instead, we would direct staff to purchase if that's, after this discussion, if that's the way the board wants to go. Then the manager would just be authorized, would authorize the purchase since it's not a budgeted expense. So then we would order the dispensers, install them, fill them, and then make sure that they're filled. So if there's any questions.
Any questions? Well, pretty straightforward.
I don't have any questions, but I have something to add. I reached out to Courtney to find out how much we spend on things like toilet paper in a year, and paper towels and soaps and sanitizers. And some of these are used in the bathrooms and some aren't, but between those three, it's about $9,500 a year that we're already spending on those, in addition to water, sewer, electric, all the things that go into having a bathroom and then paying the service to clean it, that sort of thing. And so I just wanted to put that out there for the board to see that this is not an outrageous cost in addition to what we're already doing. And, you know, it's all about having health and safety and quality of life for our residents.
I don't think we need a motion or anything, just.
Everybody's in agreement, so you go ahead and nod.
Yeah.
Go forth.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the work you put into it. We appreciate that. Move to the next item, the utility department annual report. You don't have anything going on, do you, in your department?
Have we already heard this, Rick?
Pardon me? And thank you, Supervisor Fletcher and Board. Our annual report. This year, I started out with fun facts. I know you guys are in anticipation of, the fun facts.
Sorry, your time's up.
Next.
There we go. I'm not gonna read them all. 45% of our utility operators are certified in either distribution or wastewater. Now, up front, that may not look like a big number, and it's usually low for us. But only 15 of the 31 positions are actually writable for a certification. So of course, the administrative assistants, the collection crew, the utility crew, the control group, none of those guys are readily writable for a certification exam. So if they're certified, they had to move out of operations maintenance or distribution to be eligible to write. As I mentioned, some of our number is down from us. We have 3 or 4 of the guys that are in their mid-50s, 60s, been here 30, 35 years. They just elected not to continue to renew them. So as they retire out and we get newer, younger guys in, I'm sure that number will bound back up. That is a significant priority for us. On the distribution side, we still have currently 6. When Dave Swink retires, we'll still have 5 S1 operators. So we have good succession there. On the facility side, roof side, we have 6 senior licenses. So we're in real good shape. Takes 16 hours from the flow. When a gallon of flow comes into the facility, takes 16 hours at our current flow rate to be fully treated. So everybody asks them, how long does it take to go through the system? Like our current flow is 16 hours. So less than a day.
Rick, will that improve or stay static, with the improvement with the new wastewater treatment facility?
Once we expand the capacity, the tanks will be a little larger, so it'll slow down. It'll probably be in the, or actually be more time, probably back up to the 20-hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I first started, it was about 18 to 20 hours. So there's 15 employees in the utility group that is 20 or more years experience with Delta Township. On the distribution side, we feed chloramine as opposed to free chlorine. Chloramine is 3 parts to 4 parts of chlorine to 1 part of ammonia. And the reason we feed chloramine is because it's more persistent, has less taste and odor issues, and it has less disinfection byproducts. In other words, when chlorine makes contact with anything organic, it starts making carcinogen byproducts. So chloramine gives less byproducts. Yes, sir.
Does it also make the water kind of bubbly? Because I notice sometimes at certain times of the month, the water comes out, my spigot's at home and it's a little bubbly, and I thought,
So that won't do anything with bubbly.
okay,
So,
Thank you.
It really, if it happens and it starts bubbly, just give us a call. We'll go and look at it.
okay.
It's something, and with that note, it's really noticeable over the last 5-6 years. You get these black designer sinks or dark colored sinks. We had a call the other day with a copper finished high dollar faucet. It's starting to have mineral deposits around it. And they're saying, hey, there's something wrong with my water. Well, there's nothing wrong with the water. If you have pure water, it's very, very aggressive. Think of the Grand Canyon. It was built from water, okay? The water going through it. So water has not only minerals left in it, we actually add chemicals to water for safe drinking water to make it less aggressive. We want it to be stable. So water is the greatest solute to any chemical reaction. Water, almost everything and anything will dissolve or go into a solution of water. So with that being said, if it's aggressive, it will dissolve into it. And that's how they get the lead and the copper minerals in the water, because the water is aggressive. So you make it more stable. So by adding chemicals, calcium bicarbonate, calcium hydroxide, orthophosphates, we add those chemicals in the water to make it more stable, and they will leave spots and suffer under sinks. I'll leave it there. Basically, everybody asks, when's the hardest time of the year to operate a water distribution system? It's actually September, October, because that's when the earth is at its warmest. And as you elevate temperature, you change chemical reaction. So usually September, October, we're actually checking chlorine residuals much more frequent than we would in any other time of the year. And it's just because most people think it would be August. It's actually September, October. Again, I'll leave the rest of the fun facts for you guys. All right, these 6 goals. These 6 goals, you'll see them every year, but if we do these 6 goals, we've provided safety for our employees, safety for our equipment. We have good compliance on the distribution side and our roof side. We've done corrective, proper preventive maintenance, and we've given great customers service. So we benchmark these 6 items every single year, and in 2021 was no difference. We did meet all our goals. Now, in the past, I've had 6 to 15 slides benchmarking each one of these. I did not do that this year. If you guys have any question on how we benchmark, please give me a call, or I can give you that information. But I did not show you exactly how we benchmark in the presentation this year.
I think that would have been for former treasurer Pizzo.
Yeah, there was about 15 slides at one time. All right, looking at numbers. On the left, the water service calls. You can see we're down a little bit from the previous. A lot of these is a little bit different operational. And these are calls every single time we roll a truck. And it could be anything from my water meter's noisy to water is bubbling out of the ground. A lot of these calls, if it's a water question, we change some of our questioning to work with, instead of just rolling a truck, we try to work with them on the phone a little bit, because a lot of these people really don't want us in their homes at this particular, with what's going on. But I can imagine this will start coming up in the next few years. People get more comfortable with what's happening. The water service calls are usually scheduled, so I don't have a time limit. Okay, you got to be there within 30 minutes or 2 hours, because they're usually scheduled. We just got to make sure we actually do make contact with each and every call. That differs from the sewer calls. When we get a sewer call, they don't want to schedule. They want us there yesterday. I mean, they want us immediately. Response time, usually after 2 hours. That's if we're not currently, daytime is after hours, where I have to call a guy in from home, get him in a personal vehicle, get him in a township vehicle, 9 yards, get him around. It's our 2 hours. During the day, we will be there less than 30 minutes, and we do benchmark that, and we did meet that. Little explanation of these 73 calls. And again, people call, we respond to truck with a truck roll. First, we determine, is it on the Delta side or what it is. And again, we do not just assume it's a stormwater call or a sinkhole. I do roll a truck. Of those 73, 34 were actually homeowner. It was their responsibility. So we verify it's not ours. We communicate with the homeowner, explain, okay, it's something within your home. We kind of work with them a little bit to give them some direction. The blue 11, that's usually like sinkholes, manhole covers off, that kind of question, stormwater related. And so we usually roll a truck, determine what it is, and then address it. If you guys remember this year, we did have a significant rain event, and I'll be talking about that a little later program. But we did have 26 calls for capacity sewer calls. And then the 2 for Delta, those were in our main line. We actually caught them part of our preventive maintenance. There were partial blockages, and you can pretty much guess it was non-flushables. Both of them were in the same neighborhood. We found it. We canvassed the neighborhood with flyers and knocked on doors. In 3 weeks, we were right back out there, same thing. So it's
You know, it's WLX, just a story on Jackson having this problem, and on the news acted like Jackson's the only one who has this problem. It's like, the whole world is having the problem.
yeah, it's definitely worldwide. Numbers, this is our 5 and 15-year water sales trends. Looks kind of flat, but when you look at this is really a billion gallons. So in 17, 1.2, last year was 1.11. A lot of this with really shutting down our big industrial users, our commercial clients. That should rebound. This daily average was this year in 21 was 3.38. Last year was 3.55. Previous was in the 3.6 range. So I'm guessing this will bounce back. And on our roof side, water resource recovery facility, same story, 5-year, 15-year trend. Last year's average was 4.29. It's down from 4.55 in 2020. And the previous it was 1.7 billion or so. Misdigs, this is a big story. From the 2019 to 2021. This is mainly when a fiber company comes into your township and starts drilling pretty much every square block. This is what you're going to see. And then with the additional growth. So you have that story, but you also have the story where, you know, in 19 and prior, you had a misdig ticket. It'd be like John Smith building a deck or planting a tree, one in his particular part of the yard, misdig state. With these fiber company tickets, one ticket would be an entire subdivision, like Allison Oak subdivision, that's one ticket. Willow Highway from Waverly to Clark Road would be one ticket. So it's been a big lift. We have one ticket guy, Brad Meister. He's done well getting these done. Just familiar, blue is water marking. We do water and sanitary sewer. So the green is sanitary sewer. And our flags do have the Delta Township logo on it. All right, purchases. Our sewer jet cleaning truck. This is a pretty big ticket item. We ordered last March in 2021, and we received it this March in 2022. It was almost a 12-month build. That was basically waiting on chassis. But that's our daily driver. That's our what I call the ambulance. That truck gets put in service as soon as weight restrictions are off. In spring, that gets run daily all the way up to usually November. So high use truck. On the right is a hydrostall pump. It's a lift station pump. This was a submersible lift station pump we bought for River Ridge Station. That's just a ballpark is about $22,000. They don't give them away, but usually we get 15, 20 years out of a pump like that. Our digester, this year we were able to again accomplish it in-house. This is about a 10-month process from when we dewater it to when we actually get it back in service. Usually takes a team of 3 or 4 guys when we do this. So it's a huge time constraint, but again, 10 months. And this is tank 3 of 4. So we'll do one more this year, get it done.
Now, how often do you have to do those sort of cleaning?
We would like to be on an 8-year cycle. We were doing a lot of catch up because we were that duration where we just couldn't get it cleaned, and we really struggled on how to accomplish that. We ended up bringing Merrill Brothers in on our 50-foot primary digester. because we ran out of time. But we finally, with the, we call it a turkey pump, but it's a chopper pump that can basically pump a frozen turkey. We purchased that and we can actually put that down into the tank and pump it up to our dewatering. So once we found that technology, it really sped things up.
Okay.
All right, this is what a typical booster station looks like. This is our Kreitz Road ground storage booster station. There's 5 pumps in here. This was originally constructed in 1879. This is also part of our Southern Emergency Connection. So we brought our emergency feed into this ground storage tank. And then this project was to update our electrical and modernize it. It used to look like an old nuclear plant, funny dials and everything, back in the 70s technology. So to keep that a viable Southern Emergency Connection, we needed to upgrade the electrical. All the buckets and transformers and VFDs were part of this project, along with the generator and control valve. And then we followed up behind them and did all the patching and painting in-house. Some more projects still in queue. Water main replacement pathway on St. Joe. This is between Waverly and Snow, and then Snow to Kreitz. Water main replacement pathway. Tetra Tech is our engineering consultant, with ORC is the easement acquisition third-party contractor. That's still in progress. I'm still working. There's like 33 easements we need to get.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
33.
Okay.
So, moving down to prepare abandoned municipal water wells. Part of our Southern Connection, we were allowed to get rid of our municipal wells. To get out of the requirement for sampling, the sampling is a considerable cost quarterly. We had to disconnect the 3-phase power from the panel to the pumps, which we did on all the operational pumps. And then after we were allowed to just completely dismantle them, we dug, excavated, and cut and capped them from the main in preparation for a full abandonment. All right, hydraulic flow modeling, OHM Consultants. If you can kind of see the watermark on the upper middle, that device, it looks like a portable two-handle device. That is a flow logger or a flow meter. In 2018, we bought one of those to study the Willow, east and west of I-96 in the Willow service area. And from there, we purchased 5 more. So we have 6 of those flow loggers that we can deploy in our system. And since we bought them, we've pretty much have them fully deployed continuous now. First, we did Carrier Creek, and that's how we knew and understood what's going on with Carrier Creek. For this Altamine plant coming in, we kind of knew what Carrier Creek can do, what's available space. So it was very good information there. From there, we moved them to the northeast quadrant, the River Ridge Thomas L area. If you look on the map on the right, it'd be the upper right-hand, like a yellowish color. From there, we deployed them to the Michigan Avenue, St. Joe area. And that's that pinkish, purplish, greenish looking area, or right, this would be the southeast quadrant. And we just so happened to move them into that area when the storms hit. Now, when we move this in, or when we deploy these, they're in manholes for anywhere from 3 months to 9 months, because we need dry weather, a baseline flow, and then wet weather flows. And we don't ever wish for wet weather flows, but we do need those to get good data. Whenever you put a gravity pipe in the ground, you're gonna have water flow into it. Usually at a brand new system, you're looking at a peaking factor of 3 to 4. Once you get above that, you need to look at, hey, what's going on here? And that's kind of what we're using these meters for now, is to really model our system. And people ask, how much flow does it take, rainwater, does it take to affect your treatment plant? And there's no good answer. I've seen 3/8 of an inch put us on high flow situations. I've seen 2 inches where not even a blip on the radar. It all depends, and I cannot say this word to save my life. Antecedent flow modeling. What they do is they take in consideration of how much moisture is in the ground, because that's the determining factor of what comes at us. So OHM is a primary driving force of that flow modeling. And so we get a real good picture of what our baseline is for our collection system, but it also tells us how it reacts to wet weather flows. And we had 2 significant rain events last year. One was in June. That was considered a 25-year flood. And we had 0 issues in the collection system in that area. And this area, again, is all of Michigan Avenue, St. Joe, all feeds through there into that Michigan Avenue line. So on the June system, it was a 25-year flood. We had no issues. That tells us our system can handle a 25-year flow flood. And that's what currently 10 state standards is, what you design to. So that tells me a huge picture that our system is adequately designed in that area for even today's standards. That's a big relief. Okay, we're designed accurately in what we need to be. Because you never design above that, because you're really not supposed to bring stormwater into sanitary. Now the August flooding was a whole different story. The system did not absorb that. We had issues. We had 26 sewer calls of flooding, basements flooding, sewers not working. And when you look at that, depending, it's on an amount of rainfall and amount of time space, how they rate, what your storm it is. And for that period of time, for a 6-hour period, they're looking at a 162-year storm event. You cannot design to that. Now, does that mean that, okay, we're good for a 25-year storm and you wouldn't design for a 162-year storm event? Does it mean that we really don't have any more work to do? We have a lot of work to do. But the system is designed what it needs to be. So what we'll do is, we've already moved our meters once. What we're trying to do is through flow metering, just figuring out, okay, where do we really need to spend our time to look at to figure out where this water is coming from? We've moved our meters once from this study, try to localize it. Hopefully we'll localize it one more time to really figure out where we need to spend the time. Once we know that, we'll run our CCTV camera, look at our mains, and then knock on doors to see whose sump pumps and footing tiles are into our system where they shouldn't be. And then ultimately you can do smoke testing, but you want to give a smoke bomb to anybody that put down in that hole and see what happens. You see when grown men turn to 13-year-olds. It's pretty cool. But we really got to worry. We got to do our homework first. We got to knock on the doors and say, hey, you need to put water in your traps. You need to do this in preparation for us to deploy these smoke bombs, because we don't want to put a bunch of smoke in people's homes. But once we kind of zero it into where we need to really concentrate our efforts, we'll start doing those functions. And the work last year, hopefully getting the emphasis on, hey, with the stormwater issue and addressing that is really going to do a huge impact with us. Willow Lift Station pre-engineering with OHM. Last year, we did quite a bit of work on that. And kind of, if you remember, we zeroed in on the actual site specific where we're going to put that. So it's back in OHM's hands, where they done the environmental, the site prep, and then pre-designing. So they're working on that. We did kind of, which I'll discuss in a minute. They're kind of on hiatus right now with the battery facility coming in. So, but we did a fair amount of work on that last year. All right, our roof, major capital improvement planning. Basically, the red is what we did this year. And, just 3 line items, but taking taking this from master planning to actual phase one completion design. That's a pretty significant heavy lift. But we had quite a bit of time and effort in, Tetra Tech made a comment that, Delta kind of gives us a lot of red ink on our plans and a lot of, hey, we need to look at this or we want this and whatnot. And I took that as a compliment that, we're really doing our homework and we're really pushing these guys. Hey, we don't want a good project. We want a great project. We want a successful one. And again, engineering, Ernie's been huge on that, part of that process. The second red bullet, SRF, Courtney had the heavy lift there. Definitely appreciated. She kind of made it look easy. I know it wasn't. Just getting all the funding and jump through those hoops to keep our SRF funding in line. And then the last one, advertised for phase one bid proposals. Again, that was all engineering between Ernie and Jennifer, his assistant, keeping that process and getting through that. So it was a lot of work and between the three departments, the manager's office as well. We plowed through it and made good work of it. And again, you've seen this picture before, but mainly this phase one is, our headworks, which is a huge improvement of what we have, getting our screens in front of our pumps as opposed to reverse. Our secondary treatment, our biological treatments, and our electrical improvements that we're having failing equipment now. Control building, basically getting everything set up for our tertiary process in our digestion in our second phase. There's some renderings. You guys seen these before. Again, our headworks and screening. This is huge on our pump placement, set up for success. They had some really cool turbine pumps that just looked really cool and they operated well, but they were over $250,000 a piece. To do any work, you had to pull the roof off and get a crane and pull them out. Something you can do quickly or efficiently. By going this way, horizontally set up pumps, is something that we can do in-house in less than 2 hours. Get a change of pump out. And probably more importantly, when they're a vertical position, you're lifting a 2,500 to 3,000 pound pump up in the air and sticking your head between the pump and the flute. It's kind of scary. By putting it on the side, it's on a carriage, it's very safe and for our burger safety. This is our blower pumping and chem feed building. This is three processes in one building. It'll be the aeration blower. It takes a lot of air to drive a activated sludge system, diffused air. These are high efficiency blowers. It's a chem feed building, which we need chem feed for phosphorus removal, chemical precipitation, and then all the solids and solids handling we have to pump and handle. So this building will do those three functions. The control building laid out to serve as a laboratory space, mechanical, and office spaces. All right, projects looking now in the future. Take a minute to talk about what's going to happen this year, next year, and our big projects. This is a GM facility, Altium. This is really 4 projects, and when you just say, hey, they're going to build a battery at 1.4 to 1.7 million gallons of water daily average. If you remember a few slides up, our daily average is 3.55 million, 3.35 million. It's significant. And where our current water distribution feed is at Michigan and Snow, is where all the water comes into the township. Okay, and this has to go all the way to the southwest, quite a distance. So get all that, with that water demand, get into that quadrant, we're gonna have to boost it. That's one project, and how we drill into that and what we do to boost that pressure for that volume and demand.
So Rick, the water comes to that ground tank and everything goes from there?
Actually, kinda. There's several ways we can run our system. Right now, we are floating off Warren Water Lights pump and it goes right into our system to fill our snow tower. But we can have different operating modes of operation depending on, contingencies. So we have to boost this pressure to get that demand in that quadrant is one project. The GM site itself, the booster station, we have a booster station that only serves General Motors, the current General Motors facility. We have to take water at 53 pounds per square inch and boost it to 80 pounds per square inch, 24/7. So we have an on-site booster station there that was built in the early 2000s. So we need to upgrade and develop, rebuild that for reliability. And then get water to the new battery facility. That's on the distribution side. On the sanitary sewer side, we're gonna need to build a lift station on site to get the Altium waste to us. And then, again, our current, on that General Motors site lift station, it only serves General Motors. It's, again, early 2000s, so we'll need to upgrade and build up that, probably a little more horsepower in the pumps. And then possibly an EQ station on site for that. Because again, we're gonna be looking at a little more than 1 million gallons on that site only. So for risk and resiliency, we'll be looking at hopefully EQ on that site. And this, we have Tetra Tech working on the distribution side, OHM on the sanitary sewer side. All right, this is Carrier Creek. This is between St. Joe and Gettysburg. This is the line that's sagging and we're joint separation. I'm getting well versed on this, I believe. Definitely answer any questions. I know this has been a hard one to keep moving, and I appreciate that. Hopefully this year we'll put some pipe in the ground there. And the last slide, this is our Willow ground storage tank. This is at Willow and it's adjacent to I-96. The sidewall below the top band below has to be repainted. This is a precast concrete pre-wound 2 million gallon tank. It's never been painted other than the original in 1998. So we're going to repaint this again from the dark brown band below. And then I'm going to work the contract to paint a sidewall and then hopefully an alternative to put a placemaking IM Delta on it. So be facing the highway.
I have going back to that previous slide, the Carrier Creek, it's a technical question. When you cross a creek, it's underneath the creek. How do you do that without interfering with the water flow at the surface level?
They will have to put in what they call coffer dams and little bypass pumping.
Okay.
So it's one of the thresholds they have to do in timing. You don't want to do it very long. So that's one of the considerations we have. But it's done, they build like they call it a coffer dam, is where they kind of put it to where water will stop and then they pump it around to the other side.
Do we have to get an environmental permit for that?
There is EGLE permitting, yes.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
And in the slide presentation, again, I appreciate all the support, and we've had some significant projects last few years roll down through utilities. Appreciate your support, and I'll answer any questions.
I'm gonna call today from a lady who, she started out by saying she was calling to complain about Consumers Energy and how they're treating the township so terribly. But as she went on, I realized she's actually talking about us in our water department. Her issue is the repairs to roads when water mains break. Her complaint is all these nice, beautiful paved roads down St. Joe in Michigan immediately get chopped up by Consumers Energy. And her complaint is that it seems like the patch is never at the same level. There's always bumps that then get created when you go down there. Is there anything we can do to try to, when we fix these? Because I kind of noticed it too. You always got a bump once we have to do a repair and it gets patched.
there's two things there. One is, right now, if it's done this time of year, it's a temporary patch. We have to come back in after, asphalt plants and that reopen. But if it's an existing patch that's going on, other than Kreitz Road right there by Kroger, the county forces us to use a product called flowable fill. We bed our water main, we make the repair, and then we rebed and sand our water main. And then from the bedding of the sand to the underlying road, we have to use flowable fill. It's like a cement. There's not really cement in it, but it hardens and kind of, it's like cement. And every one of those patches that have that flowable fill in it, in the wintertime, freezes at different density than all the surrounding density backfilled with sand and gravel. So you have a lump every winter, it heaves different than the rest of the road.
So we can blame the county road commission.
No,
Themselves.
blame the weather.
I've tried for 20 years to allow not, because I told them I will run SME and have them actually do density, and make sure we're in compliant to 98% compaction, but they want flowable fill.
Questions, yeah.
When you go into people's basements and you find some pumps that are hooked up to the wrong place and pumping into our sewers instead of our storm, what role does the county play in any kind of backup on that? Do you ever call on the health department?
No, it's not really a county issue. It's really with our ordinance and a township issue. Usually we point out that, it's an illicit connection. They need to convert it over to either a storm outlet of some sort. Do we go back in 6-8 months and make sure it stayed that way? Because I'm pretty sure right next storm, when it doesn't work, they hook it back to us. That is, once they get the stormwater kind of handled, it will really solve a lot of our problems, and I will feel very comfortable enforcing that. We do, again, when we see it, we instruct them that it must be converted over and whatnot.
And you keep records of that so we can see the difference as we find those, identify them and upgrade them.
We try to keep a history file on that. Do we go back 6 months or 8 months? No, we don't. Again, I put myself in the homeowner situation. I moved it over, my basement flooded now. I'm gonna do something about my basement and probably switch it back.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for it?
To that point, if you have new construction and there is a storm right out front, do we require then that at some pump then be connected to the storm drain? I mean, do we actually enforce that?
That would be under, the mechanical building inspection, and I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah, that's not really a site plan.
Yeah, we
require
I
the
forget
storm.
what year that, there was an ordinance passed in the 2000s that basically required individual house leads coming from the storm sewer made available to that, and we have an ordinance that requires that they connect. So yes, that is part of the, as Rick said, part of the plumbing code inspection by Nate now is part of the new home. So any new home would be connected to the storm sewer and would have an outlet. It's really a legacy problem with the older subdivisions where those storm sewer connections aren't available.
Thank you.
What else could homeowners do to address that flooding in their basement?
A lot of it's looking at, their east troughs, making sure the water is staying, funneled away from their perimeter of the home. Resloping to make sure that the ground doesn't slope toward their home, so the water sheds away from the home than to the home.
Okay. And that again could be a legacy thing as they settle over the years and that sort of thing.
So usually, when we go out and we offer inspection for stormwater and whatnot, we look at like 20 things that we check, and we talk to the homeowner and say, hey, if you do this, will help. If you do this, kind of a checklist.
Anything else for it?
Sort of, I'm not sure if this is really a question, but when you're talking about before supplying more water, obviously, when the battery plant goes out. You're saying getting aggressive, what does that actually mean when you say you guys need to be more aggressive? You will need to be more aggressive to push out the water, to push out that much water to the plant. You said you had to be like aggressive. We're talking about having to do more water, more gallons per day when the battery plant opens, or to the GM plant, something like that.
We'll
you said?
have a million gallons on site to move off that site. And part of the, we're gonna have to actually build a lift station on their facility boundary to get it to our current system. And then we're gonna have to upgrade our current lift station on that site, and then possibly an EQ basin to give us risk and resiliency. As far as
No, I just wanted to understand a little bit better what that meant when you were saying to be more aggressive, pump more water out when the, because I know you're saying about all that water, like it would be more, like it would be like 7 million something gallons of water per day or something like that.
I think that was when you were talking about the distance on how far you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, thank you.
On the water.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Thanks, thank you.
Yeah, to get the 1.4 to 1.7 million gallons of water, that is such a significant demand in that quadrant. We're gonna have to somehow boost the station to get water to that quadrant at that demand. And then we're also gonna have to build a pipe from our system directly into their facility property boundary.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Appreciate that update. Ross, you're up.
All right, thanks. It's not gonna be quite so technical, and robust, but
As long as you say nice things about victim advocates.
That's right.
so thanks for giving me a couple minutes to present the Delta Patrol annual report. First thing we'll talk about are events. So just looking at the events here in a minute. Here we go. All right. So obviously 2021, our events increased from 2020. This is largely due to the pandemic, people resuming their normal daily activities. We're almost back to pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Obviously deputies also resuming their daily patrol activities. So most categories are up in general. But I want to take a little dive into the events because I felt like we were, going on increased calls. And so the next slide will show us that we're actually taking more calls, almost 10,000 versus 8,593 in 2019 and 2020. I think the events being down a little bit is due to staffing. We're not doing as much proactive work out there because there's not as many deputies on the road, and the staffing problems exist. We're training more people. So we're taking, we got 6 open spots in Delta, but we still, we have 3 trainees, so we only have 3, we're only down 3 spots. So we're doing more time training new hires. So this is just the crime stats at a glance. In the next couple slides, we'll just kind of break down violent crimes and non-violent crimes. So as you can see in 2021, violent crimes increased about 17% from 2020 and about 35% from 2019. And going through the violent crimes, 2021, we had 4 homicides, 2 separate incidents. One was a triple homicide in April on Old River Trail. This is still being actively investigated by our detective bureau. We're working with the FBI crime lab and the behavioral analysis unit. So at some point we hope to get this probably to the prosecutor's office this summer. The second homicide we had was a shooting at Snipes shoe store. I think that was in November of last year. We do have 1 person in custody. Subject has not been formally charged with homicide. However, in the near future, he will be. He was out on bond, so his bond was revoked at that point, so. We're hopeful on that homicide, and then just looking at the other stats, as you can see, CSD robberies have kind of plateaued. Assaults are up again at 449. We're still seeing the domestic assaults. About 78% of that total of 449 are misdemeanor and felony domestic related assaults. That leaves us with about 15 misdemeanor assaults that aren't domestic related, and then 7% felony assaults that are not domestic related. So obviously assaults increasing correlates with, societal issues we see nationwide. I think increased mental health issues and substance abuse issues because of the pandemic. I think that's why you see those type of crimes on the rise. So total nonviolent crimes, again, there was an increase, obviously, again, due to a pandemic. From 2020, that kind of skewed the stats, but we're still down from 5% decrease from 2019. So that's good. Just looking at these crimes, at a glance, most everything is kind of leveled off to pre-pandemic levels. The big one, I just want to take note, retail theft. So the retailers are having, you see 100, they're down about 100, complaints and thefts. I don't think theft is being any less. They're having problems with employees and employee retention to investigate those retail thefts. And the last slide, all other offenses, that's back up. That's largely due, that's our proactive stats that we're seeing a lot of war on arrests, from the pre-pandemic levels. So in 2020, we noticed complaints rise at the hotels. So we were able to secure about $10,000 in grant funding in the late 2020. And that resulted in us conducting 7 operations through September of 2020 and August of 21. These are just results from those efforts. As you can see, methamphetamines, large player in the hotels, followed by heroin, and then you get some miscellaneous psilocybin mushrooms and prescription pills. But we were able to request numerous felony charges. So we hope that will have an effect on crimes at the hotels. And just to look at the next slide, that's just calls for service. So in 2019, obviously we had 285 calls. We noticed a big spike in 2020, which we decided that we needed to try to do something about. And although we spent $10,000 federal grant funding, we probably spent, of our overtime budget, another $7,000 to $8,000 on top of that. And that's the 7 operations does not include any crimes that we were able to get on patrol. So patrol, those stats did not include just patrol activities throughout the year.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so that's just under double was 2019. What kind of, certainly the slide over that with the drug and all that, didn't constitute a large percentage of that 408 calls to hotels. So anecdotally, what do you think is driving those calls to hotels in Delta Township?
I think it's a lot of people want to, get away from their homes to, either, do drugs. I think that's a big driver. And you get a lot of domestic assaults also at those hotels. As part of those calls, because a lot of them are, we get calls because, someone's being disorderly, but then you investigate that disorderly complaint and sure enough, they were fighting with their spouse or whatnot. Why do they want to go to the hotels? Because I think they don't want to do drugs necessarily in their own home, or they're transients, that don't have any place to live and they go to the hotels.
So they're not necessarily just travelers in that category.
Right, and well, most of them, yeah, most people deal with our local people from the area.
Okay.
So, you know, whether they don't have somewhere to live or they just want to go there to quote unquote get away or do their recreational activities.
So if one follow-up question is that, are these concentrated in just several hotels?
There's probably 2 specific hotels I could,
Okay.
you could name, but I think, you know, I think all the hotels see a little bit of increased activity, but concentrated, you know, at just a few hotels.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I was in Mount Pleasant today earlier and having a conversation with one of the hotel managers. And they saw a huge spike of issues at their hotel and they were all local. And they now require a $500 damage deposit if you live in if you live in the area, you can't rent a hotel room without putting a $500 deposit.
That was my question is, do you have any suggestions for the hotels of what they can do to discourage this kind of thing?
Yeah, so, you know, when we first noticed in 2020, I met with all the hotels and tried to come up with a kind of a game plan, sort of speak. And so, yeah, I gave them suggestions, what to look out for. So as you can see, you know, in 2020, 435 calls. But late in 2020 is when I met with all the hotels. And I wanted them to call us because we want to proactively, you know, prevent the crime. So I think some of the calls in 2021 was the hotels being responsible and calling us and being proactive about it. So obviously we hope to continue this work. We did get another $10,000 in grant funds that we will be utilizing that same project this year. So traffic safety. So traffic safety for the year, 7.5% traffic increase for 2020, but obviously in 20, or I should say traffic, from 2020. Obviously 2020 was an odd year because of the pandemic and not a lot of traffic for, you know, several months occurring. So how do we accomplish traffic safety? We try to accomplish that through information, education, enforcement, obviously traffic stops and citations with enforcement, education. Try to go through some traffic safety tips through social media, and you also like to use the township publications for that. And then information, we also try to give local traffic information through rave alerts when there's traffic accidents to try to prevent any secondary accidents. So then these are just the crash statistics. Obviously, total crashes are down even from pre-pandemic levels. I think that might be due to some people still working from home. So there is a little bit less traffic. I could say that, you know, the Delta Patrol, you know, increases traffic enforcement and, you know, but no, I think, you know, some change in habits for drivers. That's why you see a little bit less than you did in the pre-pandemic year of 2019. Again, seems to can't get away from the 3 fatal car accidents that happened in the last 3 years. Unfortunately, last year we did have 3 fatal car accidents. However, they were all alcohol related. So I guess that's positive in the fact that you know, it's not some random people. Just there were 2 single car accidents and 1 rear end accident.
I have a clarifying question on your bar graph for property damage. Is that real property or is that including the automobiles?
That's just automobiles. Yep. So property damage accidents were just automobiles. Obviously, it could have, you know, some lawns and mailboxes. But a property damage accident is, the cars. So then in 2021, the state rolled out a kind of a new way to look at traffic accidents. So I was able to come up with this heat map, kind of grouped the, 5 major arteries. So obviously we've got Saginaw Highway at 350 crashes, the highway at 104. Kreitz, Waverly Road and St. Joe follow up the top 5 areas that we have traffic accidents. So I just noted some at this, like the 350 hazardous actions for the Saginaw highway crashes, 47% of those accidents were unable to stop at a sure clear distance ahead, basically not paying attention and rear-ending somebody. And then 30% were failed to yield. So, and that's just, again, driving behavior, people not paying attention to their surroundings. So obviously, how do we try to reduce those? You can try to reduce those with, they talk about boulevarding, you know, Saginaw Highway. But also we could do what's called a halo effect, just try to be out on Saginaw Highway, obviously enforce. So people recognize that, you know, we're out there patrolling and, you know, they see a black Ford Explorer, they might slow down. So.
Would it help to lower the speed limit on Saginaw Highway?
I don't think so. I think it's mostly just driving behavior. It's, you know, just not paying attention. I mean, about 70% of those accidents are just people not paying attention to their surroundings.
And mostly at intersections? They're not paying attention?
I don't know. But I would probably say yes, you know, slowing down at intersections or just, you know, traffic congestion, people slowing down in front of you, then you just rear end, you know, the person in front of you.
So it's not our stores and our restaurants and everything.
Right, and that could be some of the failed to yields, the left-hand turns, you know, when you're turning left out of, you know, all those businesses. I mean, we got a large amount of businesses and, you know, people trying to make left-hand turns and whatnot. So I think that's the majority of those failed to yield type crashes.
So, I was gonna, are they concentrated more, like what areas of Saginaw? Is it just all over, or do you see it more in certain parts, or?
Well, I mean, if you look at the heat map, it's kind of the darker blue is where there are more crashes, and then obviously the lighter blue through there. So, you know, just west of Waverly, you know, you kind of see them at the intersections as well, being a little bit darker. So that's kind of where they're concentrated.
Maybe use a scattergram, you know, with the dots rather than the smudge.
I'll look into that for next year. So I'll look for one of those. And then the all important traffic, sorry, I thought I was going to overnight parking, but traffic enforcement. Again, our numbers are back up from the pandemic. So we do try to concentrate on Saginaw Highway and those areas that we've identified with high crashes. So overnight parking enforcement. So the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, we went to a complaint basis. So that's why the numbers are low. Already this year, January, we're at 60. So but imagining we're probably over 100 because we're back to the systematic enforcement throughout the township. So
I was gonna say, do you mean I need to start calling?
no, because we're out of town, but no. So we're back doing it every section weekly.
I can vouch for that.
That's right.
Because we hear about it daily, so.
Absolutely. So ordinance fines collected, they're back up, you know, from the pre-pandemic levels. Obviously, we collect ordinance fines from any misdemeanor or civil infraction ticket that the deputies write. Also, the commercial motor vehicle tickets go into this, as well as parking tickets, any medical marijuana licensing, and any restitution. So out of the 107, about 68,000 come from commercial motor vehicle enforcement. Brings us to this. So Deputy Hafner is our waymaster who helps protect the township infrastructure by enforcing his weight restrictions and regulations. So just looking at some of the stats, the big thing I wanted to point out were trucks weighed 66. This is largely due to increased frost laws in 21, which is the prior years. So they had about 6 weeks of frost laws versus the prior year was only like 3 weeks. So then again, Waymaster from revenue from citations issued about $140,000 in citations Again, had a good year because of the frost laws, obviously trying to protect the infrastructure when it is most vulnerable in the spring. And I just wanted to emphasize that Delta Township Patrol, we emphasize community policing during all our daily patrol activities, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of deputies that kind of went above and beyond their regular patrol duties to serve the resident of Delta. As you can see, Anna Zaski, she called us because she was having a problem with her wheelchair ramp. And Deputy Davison took the call. He decided to fix her ramp and reconfigure it. Him and Deputy Anderson bought all the lumber and went there on hit their days off and fixed her ramp. So I just wanted to highlight Deputy Davison and Deputy Anderson's actions to the township. So
Curious about the community policing. I'm noticing that the Lansing chapter of Black Lives Matter has been paying for ads talking about issues that, you know, voters and stuff should be concerned about. And they bash community policing. Do you have any thoughts on why community policing would be bad for the community?
I don't think it would be bad. So, I mean,
The rationale is that it's getting people used to this constant police presence in their neighborhoods and all around.
right, I don't know, because I think obviously working with the community and to come up with solutions is, you know, the way of the future of policing versus, you know, just, you know, hotspot policing where, you know, we're just all over the place making traffic stops and whatnot, try to find the underlying problem and fix it with the community. So.
Exactly, that's always been the argument for community policing is establishing an ongoing relationship with the community and not being somebody that just kind of comes in, you know, for problems.
Right.
Who's there, who's part of the community.
Right, I think, you know, hotspot policing is part of community policing, because if you identify a problem with a community, then, you know, they're having trouble with certain people, then obviously you do have to police that. But I think, you know, getting input of the citizens is really the way to go, so.
So what other things do you do that are considered community policing? So there's one example, and you said hotspot is another example, but what else qualifies as that?
It can be anything that going to these community events like that, you know, just interacting with the community at all levels. And really community policing is just a deputy going to a call and trying to solve a problem for the citizen. I mean, so we try to do it every day on every call. You know, you call it what you want, but you know, the best way,
touch a truck and.
right, sure. The best way to community police is just to take every individual call and try to work with the person to come up with a solution. So. But again, community events, no senior without a Christmas. We delivered about 40 cheer boxes to Delta residents. We participated in trick or treat trail with over 740 kids. We did shop with the cop this year with 15 Waverly students. Then fill a cop car food drive. We gathered about $6,500 worth of food that was donated to St. Gerard's Church. We also attended other events like the Delta Township Kids Mud Run, Delta Fire Open House. We go to all the Waverly High School athletic events. And I've given a couple of presentations to like the Rotary Club or the Delta Side Business Association this year. So our community events were kind of limited because of the pandemic, but we hope to kind of increase those as, you know, things resume. So community education, we're kind of big on the active violence incident training for, you know, business and citizens. So that's kind of the one of the hot topics right now. So as you can see, in September, we did AVI training, and in October, did some robbery awareness training for case credit union. And then we also do threat assessments for different businesses. This year, again, pandemic, not as many people are reaching out for this service, but it's always there just in case you guys know of any businesses that want that service. And then we also try to communicate with the citizens through Facebook posts and township publications. Then bicycle patrol, we added 3 deputies to the bicycle patrol this year. We were able to get about 160 hours on the parks and pathways, which seems to be about a reasonable number. We're trying to hit 160, 170 every year. Again, no serious crimes reported in the parks or on the pathways again this year, which is good. So. And then just personnel, busy year of hiring people. Most of our retirements were in the county this year, so we had a couple sergeants retire and some resignations in the county. So again, busy trying to hire people currently. So it's tough with the, you know, the current climate of, you know, applicants. It's not very robust these days for on the police side. So.
Yeah, so you can experience the same as the fire section.
Yep, absolutely. And we, you know, we're reaching out, we're doing different things like we found 2 people to sponsor from Olivet College, which is going to be a straight sponsorship versus we've never sponsored anyone through the police academy. So they're college students. We're actually sponsoring through the police academy because applicants are tough to come by, and everyone that's in these in the police academies, typically probably 90% of them are already sponsored by other agencies. So we have to kind of you know, come up with new things and do what other agencies are doing. And we also have an open sponsorship program through our corrections, our jail. So any corrections officer that wants to become a police officer, they just have to go to their command and ask for interview, and then we interview them. And we've had some success with that, and we've probably sponsored I think 2 or 3 people so far from corrections. And I just want to say thank you. And just want to let you know that the sheriff's office has participated in all the substation plan meetings. We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that process. And we look forward to continuing that project in the future as you guys see fit. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Covered it all well then.
Thank you.
Does we have anything else? Final public comment, no public here. Well, seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.